Timecodes. Hey everyone, Gleb Alexandrov here, and welcome back to the channel. This video is about Gobos Plus from SMOUSE on the Blender market. A gobo, short for goes before optics, in cinematography is a stencil or template placed in front of a light source to create various light patterns or textures. And this Gobos Plus pack looks like it's absolutely loaded with such stencils that you can activate literally in one click in Blender. We are talking about over 60 presets, a mix of procedural ones that you can tweak on the fly, and pre-animated gobos, all ready to go in Cycles and Eevee. Before we begin though, in the previous episodes we explored underwater caustics and shaders plus, also by SMOUSE. If you missed those, feel free to check them out right here on the channel. So this is like an anthology of SMOUSE shaders and lighting effects for Blender. Oh, and SMOUSE threw in a bundle deal if you're hungry for more. Shaders plus, underwater caustics, the whole shebang. And now it's time to tackle Gobos Plus. As a quick reminder, the SMOUSE stuff is divided into two categories: add-ons that have to be installed like Shaders Plus, and assets or asset libraries that don't have to be installed like Underwater Caustics, IES Plus or Gobos Plus for that matter. These aren't add-ons, they're just files meant for importing into the asset browser. So to import the Gobos Plus into the File Paths menu, after you downloaded the file, just click this plus icon, navigate to the folder where you have unzipped the archive downloaded from Blender Market, and save user preferences afterwards. It's good to have the asset browser available somewhere on the side in its own window like that. To make my life easier, I always sort it by library, Gobos Plus in this case. And upon expanding it, you will find the drag and drop light presets, procedural gobos textures with subfolders like grids, lighting arrays, leaves, and so on. And also the videos plus stills, which are the image-based or video-based gobos. You can also tweak the thumbnail size and resize that window itself, obviously. Yeah, I think we're good to go. To start using gobos, it's fairly easy to just grab one of these light presets. There's one for Cycles area lights, then one for Eevee, and then again this one for Cycles spotlights. Since we're in Cycles, I will click and drag the spotlight gobo right into the 3D viewport. Then I will press G and lift it a bit. So that's the spotlight. There's nothing special about it. We could have created it ourselves, but yeah. It was fast, at least. Now we just need to open the shader editor, because the Cycles gobos actually use light materials. So within the light shader, the use node checkbox should be ticked, otherwise it won't function. And then we have the emission shader to work with. Now let's go into the procedural folder and grab any preset we like, the blinds generator for instance. And then it should influence the color of that light emission. Actually, nothing happened. Why so? Because we're still in Eevee. Yeah, and light materials only work in Cycles. Alright, now there's the plain gobo light gobo switch over there, and if it's the light material it needs to be set to 1, and if it's a shadow cutout to 0. We'll come back to that later. Then each of the procedural presets has its own parameters that can be tweaked on the fly. Like here we have the border width and height, and other such stuff related to this particular preset. This stuff like imperfection strength, the wand thickness and whatnot. Then having the light material in place doesn't mean we cannot change the basic lamp settings, like power and color and so on and so forth. We still have access to all of that. If you want to make a different color or change its radius, which by the way will affect the sharpness of the gobo, or the sharpness of the light pattern in other words, we can do that. Then there's the spot size as well, defining the area or cone of projection. It doesn't really affect the softness of the shadows, by the way. So these are the two main areas where we can tweak settings. These two panels. Okay, now let's hide this spotlight and try something else. An area light instead. For area lights, the setup looks a bit different. Okay, let's make it brighter. Then let's click Use Nodes. Well, what we have just done is the same as using the area light gobo preset. This one. I hope that's clear. Next, we can go procedural, let's say cross grid, or any other really. Nothing happened. What's the matter? One thing about area lights is that their spread in the beam shape tab should be set to 0 or near 0 for maximum sharpness, and then the size of the projection becomes the size of the light source. Let me switch off the nodes for a moment. So the spread defines how diffuse is that light. It can also use non-square proportions if we set it to rectangle, and that will make it easier to use video textures later on. 16:9 aspect ratio roughly. Okay, use nodes. It's worth noting that apart from spreading it out here in this spread slider, alternatively the projected picture can be blurred elsewhere. Damn, that should probably look like a laser, right? And much stronger too. Right, where was I? The blur. The texture can be pre-blurred right here in these node group settings. That's pretty convenient once you have multiple layers and you want to blur some of them without necessarily blurring everything. Then it could come in handy. So that's the area light projection, or gobo. And notice how parallel its rays are compared to the spotlight projection. That is a notable difference. Feel free to check this video of ours if you want to learn more about texture projection. The thing that Gobos Plus does really well is video textures. These are pre-baked animations, essentially MP4 files with various textures. Okay, let me delete these lights. Go to light presets to save some time and grab the area light preset because it's pre-formatted to be the same aspect ratio as the video files, which is 16:9. Alright, I'll make it stronger. What we can do now is open up the videos folder. Right here. There we'll find the close-up, medium, wide shots and spiders unexpectedly. I'll open up the medium shots and we'll grab this 013 gobo, make it affect the color. And yeah, on hitting play there should be some animation playing. The frame rate per second should be okay generally, even though the files are a bit heavy. Hopefully it's close to real time for your computer as well. It should also run fast in Eevee as it's been optimized for Eevee too, but not for this particular light source configuration. We'll come back to that later. What else can we tweak there? If you want to change the frame rate, tab opens up the group, and there we should be able to see change FPS helper alongside some other stuff that we probably don't need to go into right now. Let's focus on this tab only. There's a cheat sheet with the values on the left for different frame rates. So we can just copy the one that we want and paste it here in the offset and divide the frame rate by this number. Then Control Tab to exit that group. Hopefully it's not too confusing. And the video texture should run now at 24 frames per second. What I respect about the design of Gobos Plus is its layering approach. Designing your own gobos is as simple as mixing a bunch of presets together using the Mix node. Let's grab another one from the close-ups, make it occupy the second slot, then we can blend between these two. I'll make the second one fully opaque for now, to focus on its properties. I like how blurred it is, perhaps. Remember, we can blur individual presets, kind of simulating how far away this virtual tree is from the surfaces it casts its shadow onto. It's similar to changing the spread. It's just that sometimes we don't want to blur everything. The mix factor should pretty much always be multiply, when it comes to simulating shadows at least, and almost always full opacity. You can see that two presets composed together like that produce a new, unique gobo, and it's really fun to try different things and design your own gobos really quickly. Then we can shift the texture coordinates or X and Y position within the mapping panel for each node group or each gobo to find that sweet spot. Also adjust the scale for the same reason. All to make it look beautiful. Then the dappled light is rarely perfectly harsh, so some pre-blurring could help. Finally, it can be rotated, just for completeness, I guess. I'm probably being slightly too detailed here, I have this feeling. It's nothing short of miraculous how adding these animated, rustling leaf shadows can make it feel like there's a living, breathing world around it. I know it's all smoke and mirrors and shadows, apparently, but it still impresses me. Now let's have a look at how Gobos Plus works in Eevee now. In Eevee, things are set up in a slightly different way. We'll still need a light source as a starting point, yet the issue is that Eevee doesn't support light textures, so we'll need to do it differently. Instead of light textures, we'll use this preset that is literally a gobo, or we can say stencil in its original meaning. Something that physically blocks or cuts out part of the light beam. Now I'll delete this spider stencil. Why spiders by default? Who knows? Anyway, first of all, I'll bring this plane in front of our lamp. Maybe we can copy the location and also the rotation. And now just rotate it manually and offset it ever so slightly like that. It can be moved back and forth like that to change the shadow softness too, by the way. Now, it requires a texture, or a preset rather. Any preset from Gobos Plus. I'll select one of these 3 branches video textures once more. Maybe this one. And after it's connected to this little dot, it should all be ready to go as a stencil. In contrast to Cycles, here in Eevee, a gobo is an object that blocks the light, rather than a light texture used within the light source. That's the main difference. Now you can tweak its placement and other parameters to paint the shadows however you like, according to the needs of your composition, I guess. Again, the radius affects how soft the shadow gradients are. To make it look slightly more realistic, jittered shadows can be turned on in the render settings and in the light settings as well, introducing a subtle and quite pleasant randomness to how shadows are sampled. Usually I like to see things from within the camera view, from the viewfinder, you know. Here's a quick demo of an Eevee scene that could have used these lighting techniques. So far it's empty and uninspiring, but here's the first gobo coming into play, with the procedural windows texture from that pack. I'm just trying to find the best looking spot for it. And by the way, there's something to say about lighting, as there are multiple light sources in this scene. Some harsh, like this one, painting a very precise, very razor-sharp shadow. And then we've got complementary, or secondary lights, which have a larger radius, and produce smoother shadow contours. And yet another, even softer and even cooler light. This is it. You see, these multiple lights plus the gobo create a rich texture. All of them working in tandem, I mean. And then we can take it further by introducing yet another gobo, perhaps. Just so it doesn't completely cover that light leak, though. It is animated, so once we hit play, the leaves start rustling and all of that. And don't forget for maximum quality to enable jittered shadows. Then, thanks to the procedural nature of this library, at any time we can go back and change the shape of the gobo. Practically at any point. The thickness and the count of the dividers in this window generator gobo or whatnot. Who said coffee? Okay, it's worth noting that some of the procedural presets in Gobos Plus are also pre-animated procedurally. Let's try something. The fan generator, for instance. I mapped shift space to play the animations, and as we can see, it works. Of course, every parameter that is exposed to this node interface is up for changing. The animation speed included, of course. Not sure whether it generates motion blur. Probably not, I think. But at least that's a really quick way of generating some shading effects. The strawberries coming out of the beans. These were some nice beans. Where was I? For Eevee though, it's worth reiterating it's done differently as a cutout shape on a plane, with this gobo node affecting the alpha, or in other words, the transparency of the material. And we should probably invert our texture like that. It's pretty fun to play with the projection, especially in this animated form. I think we need to turn on the jittered shadows for maximum realism, a larger radius to give it some softness. Awesome! Now time for some demos. Have you folks watched the Dappled light tutorials on my channel, by the way? Do you remember this Hobbit-inspired scene? Well, kudos if you do. Well, as a quick reminder, there we created the Dappled light effect by utilizing light blockers, Obviously, this can be done without any libraries or add-ons, not that we need Gobos Plus or any other add-on in order to do stuff like that. At the same time, it's not that easy to nail the shadow pattern by moving the objects in 3D space like that to influence the shadows, you know? A microscopic movement can tear the whole composition apart. It's a fairly meticulous job. Then our blur control in this case is simply moving the geometry closer or further away from the shadow receiving surface. Move the shadow casting object closer and its shadow will become more hard-edged and vice versa. It's pretty cool, but yeah. Then we've also used the secondary semi-transparent shadow texture of some kind. That is a bit closer to how we might have used Gobos Plus. That being said, with Gobos Plus it could have been an easier job potentially. After all, it could have been just one area light with the leaves animated texture or whatever. And then it could have been a matter of positioning it to find that sweet spot. And voila! All the settings are exposed anyway and up for tweaking. Multiple layers of shadows can be added if needed, that sort of stuff. The workflow seems pretty straightforward, isn't it? Then just hit play and enjoy. Ooh, it's pretty slow here. But anyway, easy peasy. Now yet another demo. On the sales page of Gobos Plus, I saw this spectacular laser show animation by Cody, with those classic sculptural overtones. Naturally, I got curious and thought I must try it out, specifically simulating that laser light projection. And so this is my scene, full of sketchfab models, mostly CC0, with a reverse key light without any texture, just a good old shoulder light. What I want is a nice solid base to layer our Gobos onto. Then, if the procedural grid pattern is projected from above, it would look like that. What I want to say is that where you project it from sets how readable the pattern is. From the top down, it isn't too readable, I'd say, and works fine as a seasoning rather than the main dish. The same thing, but projected frontally from this camera view essentially will look more, how should I put it, squarely defined, with a grid reading clearly as a grid. That's very important, actually, the angle of the projection. Fun fact, from the top view, this one would also become much more readable in terms of its pattern. So of course, it's a matter of a camera angle as well. Moving on to the next pattern. This one kind of resembles the NVIDIA logo from the top view. Anyway, it's a great reminder that different Gobos create completely different light and shadows distributions, resulting in a whole new visual composition through the camera. Shaping light is a powerful tool for guiding the viewer's eye across the canvas, or the camera frame for that matter, allowing you to subtly direct attention where it matters most, or just to make everything look beautiful, I guess. And having that preset sliders available makes finding that sweet light and shadow balance a whole lot easier. Oh, and by the way, Dappled light is often a cheat code for making lighting feel more interesting and undeniably cinematic. You've probably seen this in action in our simple trick for eye-catching lighting video right here on this channel. Then, if this pattern feels a bit too big and too smooth, then something more fractured can be used instead, like these animated tree shadows. Nice. It's hard to check the animation without pre-rendering it first, sometimes. There's still a lot of noise involved. Anyway, as I've also mentioned, I usually like to have some sort of a base light layer underneath the pattern, a supporting layer, but it's totally up to you, of course. Now let me switch it back to the red lasers idea. So, where was it? And maybe for a different camera view, perhaps, to shake things up. A pretty cool trick for crispy projections like this is to mix the original gobo, which is the cross-grid node group in this case, with one more instance of that group with some blur, using the add blending mode as well. It's literally the same preset, just blurred a bit, or pre-blurred if you wish. And that gives it some extra bloom, almost. To me it looks like extra scattering, diffusion, that sort of light phenomena. And it just makes the whole thing look slightly more complete and high budget, if that's appropriate to put it like that. When working with fairly intense projections like this one, checking the view transform could prove pretty useful. Now it's set to filmic. Notice the orange shade of red. If we changed it to AGX, we'd get a mildly different rendition of certain colors. The salmon red, slightly desaturated in the upper portion of the range, especially in higher exposures. So the view transform can have a prominent effect in certain cases, especially when working with higher saturations and intensities, that is. If that sounds confusing, you can always check out our freemium Blender to Resolve workflow on our Gumroad for a crash course on color management, view transforms, and why it matters for digital artists like us. Blender to Resolve, just Google it or follow the link in the description. Before calling it a day, here's a fun fact. Almost all plugins and asset packs by SMOUSE feature some sort of underwater caustics. Gobos Plus is no exception. There's this water caustics animated preset with tweakable parameters. It feels almost like a product within a product. Really versatile. I can play with stuff like that for hours. I mean, literally, for hours. We've covered the underwater caustics in the dedicated tutorial, by the way, that you can check right on this channel or on our creativeshrimp.com website. Okay, so there you have it, Gobos Plus dissected, explored and hopefully demystified. We've seen how it handles everything, from intricate procedural patterns to those mesmerizing animated textures, and how you can wield that power in both Cycles and Eevee. The key takeaway? This isn't just a library of presets, even though it is. It's a toolkit for crafting your vision, or building lighting that's uniquely yours. So grab it, mess around and see what you can do with it. And of course, if you want to explore more of the SMOUSE ecosystem, they've got that bundle deal going on with Shaders Plus and other stuff. It's a pretty sweet package if you're looking to boost your Blender arsenal. Link is in the description as always.